every meeting they would discuss someone living at the house, how they were thinking. This person is dreaming incorrectly, becoming very fearful. This person is becoming overwhelmed with their ego and they're starting to get jealous. This person is trying to make the other one look bad. They were studying everybody's human condition. And so to them it became kind of like a laboratory thing, and Billy was kind of like sitting in the middle. He's got all these 10, 15 people in the house behind him that are going berserko, and then he's trying to keep his cool and get them to keep coming back. I think 4 or 5 times on there, he's literally almost on his knees. Please come back. I want more education. Let's continue. And they kept saying, like, that's enough. It's time to stop. And at the end, on the last contact in October 78, they put him under what they called a probation for a year. If everybody could get themselves together and calm down, they would start them again. But it got worse. Instead, people just went nuts around the house, and Billy says no more, so they didn't come back anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
Those 2 volumes that Wendell Stevens put out, really rigorous translations, how complete are accurate?
Wendell Stevens was the original investigator on the case. That's how I found out about it. The notes, Billy's notes, the 1,800 pages of all of his typewritten notes, Wendell has a set and I have a set. And Wendell made the messages from the Pleiades books out of those. Wendell didn't change anything. What Wendell did was leave things out that he didn't think people were really ready to hear, and mostly that was pretty much all the spiritual stuff. Wendell's not comfortable with that. You must remember that Wendell's more of a nuts and bolts, chase the UFO picture kind of guy. So it was his decision just to leave a lot of that out of the books. But from what I've read in him, Wendell didn't make any effort, neither did I, to try to change anything. And we just figured, let the marbles fall wherever they do. My book, The Pleiadian Mission, is a little different. I actually went to Switzerland because Wendell and Lee wouldn't give me all the notes. And so when I was traveling on my next trip, I said, I'll just go to Switzerland and get them myself. So when I did, I was interested in all the stuff that wasn't in the Messages books. Of course, the Messages books weren't all out yet at that point. So what's in mine is pretty much, most of the book is 67%, 60 to 70%, mostly the spiritual stuff, which is what I was particularly interested in. The book isn't about the UFO case. It's about the Pleiadians, how they live, why they came here, all about Earth, our history, what a creation is, what a universe is, all about the incarnation and the cycles and everything. These were the things, the questions that I had, and that's predominantly what's in my book. So
your book is your book a summary then?
Yeah, in my words. Yeah. And I think in some ways, not to put Wendell's down at all, I'm a big Wendell fan, I love the guy, but my book is probably more accurate at the things I talk about than his, because Wendell wasn't interested in a lot of those things. Wendell felt obligated to put it out, but didn't care that too much about it. And there's a lot of places in Billy's notes where things are not explained well, and they just didn't get it right, and then later on they fixed it, and Wendell didn't know about that. So Wendell didn't take the effort really to look into things that much because he wasn't that interested in it.
Of course, you're reading translations or exercise in masochism.
I've got one set of them. I used to make sets of them every now and then for study groups. People, the whole pile of them. Yeah, they were translated by a German student who didn't speak English. So he got a dictionary and transliterated it, just word for word without fixing the grammar. So it's as you read it, after you read the first few pages, that you're about getting a headache trying to figure out where the adjectives are. Why isn't the adjective over here? And we don't speak that way. But then you get used to it. You get a flow after a while, and you kind of look at sentence by sentence, and then you start reading them a little bit better. So the translations are lousy. The first 3 books of the 18 books I had translated in beautiful English. I paid $2,500 a book to a translator. I was going to do the whole 18 and then put them out on the market. And I just gave up. I couldn't afford it for one thing. And about that point is when I decided to get out of the figure, so I just gave up. And I had put the whole thing on audio tape, so I figured that was enough. And then I picked out the more interesting parts of all the notes and put it in the Pleiadian Mission book and stopped there. It's just too big of a task. You have to do the whole thing. There's also some other books that Billy didn't give me, but which I read over there. There was 2 more books that Wendell doesn't have and I don't have. There's actually 20 sets of the books. But the last 2, there's very little information from the ETs at all in it. The last 2 are all about the people in the house arguing. all the fighting. People were suing each other. One guy called the sheriff on another guy, and somebody's sleeping with somebody. It's just a big soap opera, and that's why he never released those. He never gave them to Wendell either. It's a real interesting study of what happens to a small group of people in a remote area when something like this happens to them. They were just overwhelmed with it, and the human condition went crazy. So, now none of us would do anything like that, I'm sure. But, but yes, I could write a whole other book just on the soap opera of my life inside the figure, all the stories and everything. But I'm not so much into the messenger, I'm into the message, so I really wasn't looking at any of that. I went over there for my own self to get educated, and that's all I really paid attention to. Yeah. Well, let's take a little seat break. I see a lot of people squirming. And men's room this way, and ladies' room is that way. And I'll be at the table. He's down, and they're punching everything. You might want to squirm around in your seats just a little bit so you can see the TV. I've got a little extra videotape you might kind of enjoy. I mentioned earlier about those of you who on the way home tonight might catch a ride and get to go see a few things. What kind of food? Meier says he never saw them eat anything but like apples and peaches and oranges, just fruits and stuff. They don't eat. He says in their homes there's no kitchens. They don't make meals. He says basically they almost don't eat. Yeah. They would just go nuts at a Jack-in-the-Box, I imagine, He says they kind of munch. He says they don't have to eat very much. They eat very small quantities. And something in their atmosphere controls their metabolism. They don't get hungry very often. And they don't sleep very much. They sleep like an hour and a half and 2 hours on a 24-hour-a-day cycle. But he says they're in deep REM within a couple of minutes. They just fall out like they're dead. They wake up in about 2 hours. They're totally revitalized. And a lot of them sleep even less than that. So he says they're far more mental. They've gotten to a point with their own evolution where they're more in control of their whole body mentally. And so things are a little different. We're a little out of control with our bodies. So, what I've got on the tape, I've been up here a couple of times before, and usually I try to bring some new things for every time when I come around. I've got several tapes laying around the house that I've gotten in various places. What's on this tape? And I wasn't going to show the tape of the other planets and the mothership of Jupiter and the dinosaurs and things, but I had 4 or 5 people ask me at the table, so I think it's on this tape. So we'll start it up and see if it's in the right spot. So I should tell you a little bit about what it is. So I know this is a fringe group, but I don't want anybody falling off their chairs there. So. Imagine, if you will, that you did get a chance to ride on one of these, and you said, just as a lark, gee, could you take me up and show me some other planets? And they do, and you start seeing satellites and other equipment around Mars and so forth, and start asking questions. And they tell you, well, there are projects going on your own planet that are already going up to the moon and Mars that they're not telling you about. And these satellites you're looking at and this equipment is part of joint efforts by America and Russia in one group, and also the Germans, the technologists who survived World War II and went on their own, are already building communities up there. They're way ahead of everybody else. So there's some stuff up here that you're not seeing on the evening news. So I'm going to show you a couple of those things. As well, at one point, Bill asked if it was possible to go back in time and actually see dinosaurs. He was just kind of goofing.